the unveiling of the new Pope, and for these lucky, I was going to say few, but there's thousands in St. Peter's Square. They're here all the day when the decision has been made.
They had no idea. It could take a day, it could take a month or a year, God knows what. Yeah. And there were 133 people sequestered, cardinals, to make this selection. And so the people who are in Vatican City right now, they're the ones that get to witness the new Pope coming out, the announcement of who it is. And that is because 133, two-thirds of them agreed. And obviously it was a pretty quick, speedy decision. So we'll see what the count was, the white smoke. Did you notice on your watch what time it was? Because it wasn't long ago, 20 minutes? I don't know what the white smoke came out about. Let's say. We started the show. We started the 9. I think it just came out maybe 10 minutes ago. Yeah.
And then on the left here, just so that everybody's on the same page, that's the balcony that everybody's looking at the ground below, because that's where the announcement is going to be made, and the new Pope will be revealed to the masses there in person, and then of course to the millions of Catholics around the world that are watching with bated breath to see who will be the next highest pontiff here in the Catholic faith. When they come out on that balcony, they will address the crowd, and of course we will find out what their name is and what the name they wish to be called. I mentioned that earlier. Pope Francis chose the name, his name, in honor of Francis of Assisi. He was an Italian saint who renounced his family wealth and championed the poor, and that really did sort of give us a signal as to what his papacy would be like. And that really was what he championed over the course of his tenure there as Pope. So perhaps there'll be some sort of an indication based on the name the new Pope chooses to be called, what sort of his mission will be and what direction he wants to take the church in for the years that he will be serving as Pope.
For Pope Francis's years, he was the reformer. Yeah. And so they pushed the church in a different direction, kind of a more forward direction, maybe a more inclusive direction. And that's going to be the big question, is will they go sort of more traditional, conservative, or will they continue in his legacy to kind of move things forward? We will see. Like you said, Jude, it's a big indication, right? People are going, well, what I'm just loving is just listening to the crowds and the bells. And we have so many cameras out there live with our sister and our parent company, News Nation, is providing all of these camera angles and live shots to all of our Next Star stations, so we get to dip in and out of their live coverage as well, which we'll continue to do throughout the morning.
Yeah, whenever they come back from commercial break, we'll dip back in, because they've lined up a number of interviews to sort of walk people through the process, a process that we weren't quite sure how long it was going to take. I mean, historically, it's taken multiple years to name a new Pope, but that was way back in the 15th or so century. In modern times, like the last few popes, they've been selected within the first couple days of the conclave assembling, which of course happened 9 days after that period of mourning that the church conducted to honor the late Pope. And the conclave came together just 2 days ago, and here in our third round of voting on the second day of the conclave, they have come to a consensus, or at least a two-thirds consensus, among the 133 cardinals that were voting on who the next Pope would be.
All right, let's reconnect now with News Nation and listen to some of their coverage.
We saw white smoke billowing from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel, and we know that means a new Pope has, in fact, been elected. Now, earlier, a few hours earlier today, we saw black smoke. That means after 2 rounds of voting, the cardinals there, the 133 cardinals, had yet to come to a decision. But again, 20 minutes ago, we saw that white smoke come out, and in moments, hopefully, we will soon see the new Pope come onto that balcony there, and we will learn who has been selected. I'd like to welcome in Kron Flynn. He is Vatican correspondent for EWTN News, live there on the phone for us. Colm, you are there amongst the crowds. First of all, just talk about the feeling there on the ground right now.
Yeah, Nicole, hey, it's great to talk to you. I am standing right in the middle of the huge crowd of tens of thousands of people here in St. Peter's Square. I was just down the street when all of a sudden, with my back to St. Peter's in the Vatican, when I heard this huge roar from the crowd, a cheer, and immediately I knew what had happened. I spun around and I saw the white smoke billowing from that chimney on top of the Sistine Chapel. And as I was looking at that, people were running right past me, making their way up to St. Peter's Square. Then the bells of the Basilica started to ring out across the eternal city, and from every street, leading from every direction to the Vatican, they came running. I can't describe the atmosphere here inside St. Peter's Square at the moment. You can see people from all over the world with their nation's flags in the air. When the white smoke happened to Sydney, I saw people jump and punch the air. People were hugging each other. A few tears I can see from people now as I look over. And lots of religions around, priests and nuns, of course. This isn't just an election. This means something deeply profound to so many people, not just here in St. Peter's Square, but right around the world. This is the jubilous moment after the passing, the sorrowful passing of our Holy Father, Pope Francis. This is now what happens. The church goes on, the white smoke. And you can just imagine, Nicole, what's happening right now. Because as I look at the Sistine Chapel, I'm squinting because the sun is going down behind the Vatican. And so I'm just making out the outline of the Apostolic Palace of the Sistine Chapel. That man, that cardinal, whoever he is, he's not a cardinal anymore. He is now the Holy Father. He will be brought into the Room of Tears just next to the Sistine Chapel. And this is where he has a moment after his brother cardinal congratulated him. So that the enormity of what is after happening, how his life will never be the same again. What is now resting on his shoulders, leading the global Catholic Church of 1.4 billion people. He has a few minutes to take that in, to say a prayer, to have a moment of peace before he goes to the balcony. And in that room, Nicole, hanging on the railing, there are three papal Catholics in white. One is a small, one is a medium, and one is a large. He has to fit into one of them. And then they will walk him through the corridors of the Apostolic Palace, marched by the Swiss Guard in front of him. He will slowly walk to the main room in the front of St. Peter's Basilica. So almost out of say, we have a new Pope in Latin, the curtains will be drawn back, and he will emerge to a screaming crowd here. It's an incredible process, and this is an incredible moment, Cole.
So, Kron, talk about what happens now with the new Pope, because you made such a great point there. I mean, his life is now forever changed. He is no longer a cardinal. But again, so we had 133 cardinals who came to the Sistine Chapel for this papal conclave. Now, I would imagine some of them may have had the idea that, maybe it will be me, but the rest of them, 132 cardinals, are going back home. So what happens now, with this new Pope? I mean, because his life is forever changed. What happens over the next few days with him?
Yeah. You're so right. I was even thinking that over the last few days before the conclave started, and they were locked into the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. You would see some of them walking around. I live on Borgo Pio, a beautiful school just next to the Vatican. It was like next to the cardinal having a cup of coffee, and it crossed my mind. My God, for one of these men, they will never be able to just walk out of the street and go for a coffee again. They'll never be able to pop down to their favorite restaurant. They'll never be able to go anywhere without a security detail, the Swiss Guard. They will now instantly become one of the most recognizable and one of the most important figures in the world. It's hard to imagine just what that feels like, and I'm sure for one of those men, who's after being told you'll be selected by your brother cardinal, 2/3 majority as the leader of the Catholic Church. When does that set in? How does that set in? I mean, I think that's a beautiful name for the room of tears. Because I imagine you would just break down and weep, trying to comprehend what is after happening to your life, and how many people are now depending on you, not only to run the institution of the Catholic Church, to help with its charitable work all over the world, to help with all the outreach that the Church does in every single continent, but ultimately what Catholics believe, what's at stake here, it's heaven, it's eternal life, and people look to this one person, Holy Father, Shepherd, you are one of the successors of the apostles. You have to guide us on this earthly journey towards the next life in heaven. I mean, that's how profound and deep and important this is. So, I can't describe to you, Nicole, I can't answer that question, how their life is going to change, but, there are a few rituals that will take place. They will have a mass to expose the Pope. We don't know when that will happen. It will be up to him to decide. And then really, as quickly as that, it will get into the day-to-day of running of the Catholic Church and of leading his sheep as a shepherd all over the world.
So, Coleman, as you've been talking there, we're watching this band talk. There's so much history and tradition, no doubt, connected to the Catholic Church. With this specifically, walk us through what we are seeing. What is happening right now?
Well, right now, I am standing looking at the front of St. Peter's Basilica. You can see the beautiful red curtains, which are drawn back, but the glass door is closed, not yet open, on that main balcony on the front of the Basilica, under the beautiful dome. And I can see helicopters in the air flying right overhead, getting shots to beam on television all over the world. Some of them security helicopters. And if I just turn to my left and right, Nicole, every single rooftop, I can see the bright lights of television as TV networks from Good Day New Zealand, Sunrise Australia, right across to the United States, all over the world. They are now beaming these pictures live into millions, if not maybe a billion homes. I can hear actually a band playing now, a marching band, and people are looking over seeing where it is coming from. I can't see it, but I can hear it. And just as I'm talking to you before, I'm looking around, I can see a young girl with her hand over her mouth, just staring up in disbelief. I can see another couple waving a flag from Argentina, from France, to some country. I can see a young African nun who looks pretty concerned with her arms folded, maybe wondering who is about to come to the balcony. Is it good news for Africa? Is it bad news for Africa? I can see some of their Channel 9 from Australia, their media. It is just an incredible atmosphere with everyone here, and the crowd is now roaring with no one at the balcony yet. And by the way, just to give you an idea of the weather, it is a stunning day. There's not a cloud in the sky, and the sun is blinding us as it goes down behind. It's actually in a bad position because the sun is right behind the Basilica, as it said. So we're all going to have our eyes burned out of our heads as we stare. And here is the marching band of the Swiss Guards, now making their way into St. Peter's Square, the first part of the ceremony to welcome the new Pope to the balcony, whoever that may be.
I love it. All right, Cole Flynn, please stand by for us. We will continue our coverage. A new Pope has been elected. We are waiting for the announcement. We'll have more coverage after another quick break.
Amazing. We'll just take over coverage now while they're going to a break as we continue our coverage of the new Pope to be announced very soon. And millions of people are jammed into Vatican City to hear the big announcement and see who the Pope is going to be. The white smoke came just within about the half hour, indicating that they had made a decision.
And as you can see, there's the Swiss Guard. We saw the Vatican band sort of follow into the square, and the guard followed them, and now they're in formation in front of the Basilica, where above them is that balcony that you see in the little box. And we assume by the pomp and circumstance on display that we're probably moments away from the unveiling and announcement of who the new Pope will be. We don't know who it is. We know it was one of the 133 cardinals that were in there voting. Only those under the age of 80 could participate in this vote. And one of those cardinals now has been anointed as the new Pope, the Holy Father, going forward for however many years they're going to be in that office. And under what name, we don't know yet. They'll have to select that, and that'll be announced to the crowd and the world once they come out onto the balcony. It sounds like the crowd has almost hushed now as they're waiting. They were cheering emphatically earlier.
And the bells tolled, and then they clearly have this whole ceremony lined up with protocol that they always do. But normally, you know, you would see the Pope come out onto the balcony during big holidays to give services when, as you can see with the overhead shot, you know, Vatican City is pretty packed for that, but not like this. I mean, if you look at, you know, events that we've had on the DC Mall here in America, you can kind of use your eyeball to gear that that's definitely more than 1 million people, you know. So a lot of people flew in not knowing if they would be there during the announcement. And so, look, they're from Canada, and if people from around the world are waving their flags, and there are more than 1 billion, what, 1.5 billion Catholics around the world that are waiting for this decision, this announcement to see the new Pope.
And there's another band that is now working its way through St. Peter's Square and towards the Basilica itself. So perhaps we'll see this play out several times as we see more and more of the pomp circumstance unfold before our eyes and the eyes of the world. Now, the name of the Pope, we understand, will be announced by a top cardinal. They are going to appear at the balcony and utter in Latin, "We have a Pope." And from there, from that balcony, the cardinal then will read the winning cardinal's birth name in Latin, and that will reveal, and then we'll reveal the name that he has chosen to be called. And then that new pope is expected to make his first public appearance there, impart blessing from that balcony to the crowd below.
Well, let's listen in a little bit. We've got cameras all over the square there. We have live reporters as well. We'll go back to News Nation as soon as they're available. But let's listen in so it feels like you're really at the event.
We understand our parent network, News Nation, is back with ongoing coverage, so we want to take you to them now to continue.
Below from the chimney there at the Sistine Chapel at about 7 minutes past the hour. So it's now been about a half hour ago that the world learned a new pope had been elected. So we have 3 different shots on your screen. You can see a band playing. Obviously, the ceremony has begun. The celebrations are starting. There, the lower left of your screen, you can just see tens of thousands. That is just a small portion of the people who are there in Vatican City who are celebrating as the sun is starting to set there in Rome. You can see a beautiful, gorgeous day. Now that the Pope has been elected, the weather is absolutely cooperating. And then taking up the majority of your screen, we're taking a live look at the Vatican balcony. That is where we will see the new Pope emerge, and we will all learn who has been elected. I'd like to welcome in right now Joseph Capizzi, professor at Catholic University of America. Professor, thank you so much for giving us some of your time on such a monumental day. First of all, just talk about your reaction, talk about just this joy we are seeing from Catholics and absolutely from non-Catholics alike.
Yeah, look, it's a super exciting moment, right? Everybody's attention was drawn to Rome over the past week or so since Pope Francis passed away. You can see just the utter jubilation of the crowd there in Rome. I'm sure there are thousands and thousands more people descending upon the square, St. Peter's Square, as we speak. Everybody I know is texting each other and just as excited as can be. It's like getting a present and you don't know what it is yet. So you know it's going to be something great. And we're all just waiting to see, what happens. But there is also this feeling of, okay, here we are, we're all, excited, and who knows how long now it'll be until the announcement is made.
All right, so I would love for you to walk us through kind of what happens now as we take a look at the balcony. But before we do that, there's so much history, there's so much tradition. We're seeing bands playing here. Just walk us through some of what we're seeing on the ground there at St. Peter's Square.
Yeah, so you have to remind yourself that the Pope is not merely a religious personage, right? He's also the head of a state, and the Vatican City is a state, that is UN standing. And so as the head of state, part of what you're looking at is essentially arrayed military forces that in the past have come to the assistance of the papacy. And so that tradition is carried on out in front of us. They're gathering, in essence, to sort of ceremonially protect the new head of state and also welcome him. So that's part of what's going on. And then as we all, I think at this point, have read or heard about on TV, there's a lot going on behind the scenes as the man who has agreed to become the next pope, who's just been elected by the cardinals, prepares himself, chooses his name, for instance, and that's an extraordinarily sort of weighty decision for him. There's a good chance he might have gone in with the name in mind, but now, he's feeling the pressure of this moment and really the gravity of being the successor to St. Peter, because ultimately that's what the Pope is. He's the successor to an historical figure who lived 2,000 years ago and who was executed in Rome. And now he's going to step into those shoes. It's almost unimaginable what the pressure must be.
Absolutely. And Professor, I want to take a moment because we heard the crowd chanting something there, and it almost, things have quieted down. So I'm almost wondering if very soon we will see him emerge there. But I'd like to just listen in to what we're hearing for a bit. Let's just listen. We've been listening in now. And Professor, I see that shot there on the right, taking up most of the screen, zooming in a bit. So I've been trying to look as closely as I can to see if I see any movement there behind that doorway, that window. I don't see any movement, but we know that is where the new Pope will, in fact, emerge. So you talked there, Professor, about the new Pope choosing his name. Talk to us about that. What goes into that? What is the significance of the name that he will now choose?
So the name will typically give us an indication of how the new Pope regards the direction of his papacy. If you look at Pope Francis chose a name that had never been chosen previously, right? In the 265 prior successors to St. Peter, nobody had chosen the name of Francis. He chose a new name, right, which already indicates a kind of, I'm going to do something different than has been done previously. And then he chose the name of St. Francis, somebody to whom he felt spiritually very close and who embodied the kind of simplicity, humility, and poverty that Francis thought was an essential feature of being a true servant of Christ and a servant of Christ's church. So in that case, there are clear indications of where Pope Francis wanted to drive the papacy during his time and how he wanted to serve the people of God. Likewise, prior popes have chosen the names of popes who came before them. Pope John the 23rd in the middle of the 20th century. There are 22 prior Pope Johns. Pope John Paul II choosing the name of his immediate predecessor, Pope John Paul I, who had died after only a month serving as the Pope, right? So there's always a kind of heaviness to what the name indicates. So once we hear what the new Pope's name will be, we'll get a sense of